Okay. 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 No one is thinking if everyone is thinking alike. It was necessary for staff officers to agree with General Patton. He followed Ben Franklin's idea that no one was thinking if everyone was thinking alike. General Patton did not want staff officers to follow his every whim. He was harsh with officers who would defer and not have any valid reason for the difference of opinion about a mission or problem. One morning, a newly commissioned National Guard colonel objected to a training plan which our staff had prepared. Many of these new colonels received their military rank by political appointment and not for military merit. General Patton was patient and asked of the colonel, "List your reasons for objecting to this training plan." "I just do not think it will work." The colonel wanted to appear more important than he wanted to object to the plan. Why? The colonel had not learned a storm was brewing when General Patton used the word why. That training plan is too ambitious with too little time. The colonel was not losing any of his arrogance. Why? General Patton asked again. "Give reasons. This command will not play hunches. All of our plans are too ambitious. I always want more than 100% out of every man. Give me reasons. War is too dangerous to make decisions which are not based on sound facts. Give me your reason for objecting to this plan." "I just do not think it will work," the colonel insisted. General Patton went into his display of temper. "Now there is your problem, Colonel. You just do not think. I will not have any non-thinkers on this staff. Wars are not won by non-thinkers and commanders making decisions on hunches." The colonel did not respond. His arrogance was gone. General Patton continued, "We all have to be thinking every second. That is the reason for our deep breathing. We got to get all the oxygen we can into the brain. Battle plans must be based on facts, cold hard facts. If we do not get the facts, we cannot make good decisions. We will lose battles and men will be killed who should be permitted to live. Every officer and every man must think for himself and be thinking every second. I want my orders followed to the letter after we decide on a battle plan, but I do not want any man around me who just does not think. We may have different ideas, but we will settle on a battle plan. When we settle on a plan, that is the plan we will use, not because I order it, but because it is the best plan based on cold hard facts. This is the whole idea of these frequent staff meetings. I want every last one of you to know the battle plan and know why it is the best." General Patton hesitated. There is no place for any man in war who does not think. "Do you have any questions about this plan, Colonel?" "No, sir. Is there anything you want to say about this plan?" General Patton continued to speak. General Patton continued to spank the colonel. "No, sir." All of his arrogance was gone. I never saw the colonel again. I asked our adjutant what happened to the colonel, and it was told he had been transferred. I remember one staff meeting when I was on the spot for a decision, when I had made as the judge, advocate, the attorney for the command. I decided that and there's a picture of him giving a lecture to all officers. I didn't know General Patton was a public speaker. That's pretty cool. I decided, hold on, first chapel service in the desert. General Patton in front row. That's great, dude. Author's tent with solar heated wash basin. Nothing? Uh-oh, got this again. All right, we're good. Latrine at end of officers' tents. Source of drinking water, the Lister bag. And then every evening, a formation for lowering of the flag. I kind of forgot what he said. Something about General Patton. I decided that we should court-martial one of our regular Army majors who had been involved in an auto accident on the road between Palm Springs and Indio, California. The major had caused an auto accident because he was driving too drunk to walk. At the scene of the adjacent, the major had been abusive and profane to the ladies in the car, which the major's car had struck. In addition, the major had insulted the arresting officers of California. These state officers took all of the major's abuse and returned him to our military police, although the California officers, had every legal right to put him in jail in Palm Springs or Indio. The following Monday morning, the major was sober and on duty with his troops. When the facts were given to me by our military police, I advised that the major had to be court-martialed for his criminal acts. My decision would result in the major being fined several $100s, perhaps a jail sentence, and dismissal from the military service. I discussed my decision with our chief of staff. The charges were prepared and filed with our higher headquarters with a request for the formation of a general court-martial or highest military court. The feuding among the officers started immediately. There were many who argued for the major. It was only a few months after Pearl Harbor. We needed every officer we could get. The major was a West Point graduate, a trained officer. We need officers with training. It was not a crime for soldiers to drink. I was under personal attack. The rank of a judge, advocate, was supposed to be held by a full colonel. I was only a lieutenant. It was argued that I was too young and had been given too much authority. Also, it was said I did not know anything about military law and court-martial procedure, despite my being assigned to work with the court-martial courts for over a year. In addition, when called to active duty, I was the attorney for the state of India, for the state of India, for the state of Indiana, for one of the larger countries. All of my arguments were sound. However, the court-martial papers were returned from higher headquarters with an instruction to reprimand the major, give him a reduction in pay, and permit him to continue in the command of the troops. I was not gaining any friends on the staff. General Patton reviewed the case at a staff meeting. I remember his closing words, "Lieutenant, your decision has put us in an embarrassing position with our higher headquarters. Do you have any explanation for a decision?" I started to answer from the back of the room. General Patton stopped me, saying, "Get up here. Listen, Lieutenant, you can't be seen and heard." I walked to the front of the room and faced the high-ranking officers to the front row, most of them West Point graduates. They were wearing war faces. I attempted to speak slowly. "I agree with all of you. The major is a good officer. We all know him. The truth is he had an auto accident. He could not deny the accident. He could not deny being drunk. He was so drunk, he could not stand without leaning on his car. He could not walk one step down the center line of the road as he was asked to do by the California officers. These officers returned him 70 miles to our camp. The major was delivered to our military police with our promise to the California officers that we would prosecute the major for driving while under the influence of liquor. I was not gaining. The war faces never changed. I decided to answer General Patton's questions. To answer the question about our command being embarrassed, it should never be embarrassing to follow our own military laws. We should not be embarrassed to keep the promise our military police made to the California police officers. If we had not made this promise, you could be sure that the major would be in jail in Palm Springs under prosecution by the law enforcement officers of California. I can understand the reasoning of our higher headquarters. We do need trained officers. I was not gaining. I attacked the frontline staff members with their staff war faces. Is there any one of you that would expect to get drunk, swear at ladies, strike up police officers, and expect to be given a light tap on your wrist? Would you expect to avoid being court-martialed because you were a trained officer? Is the conduct of the major that of an officer and a gentleman under the definition of our articles of war? If any of you would expect to escape punishment for your military crimes, what kind of examples would this be for the men we command? Could this be could Would this put us in an embarrassing position with our troops? If an enlisted man had caused such a serious accident, could you believe that our high headquarters would not insist that the soldier be court-martialed? Would this help General Patton's command to permit such military and civilian crimes to go without the punishment demanded by our Army regulations? I look at General Patton, who was standing at the window in the wall at the side of our staff briefing room. I looked to him for support, but I could not see any change in the expression on his face. We called the opening in the side of our building a window, but it did not have any glass nor screen. Half of the screen of the room could not be raised on a hinge to let the heat out of the building. I decided to end my argument with some of General Patton's own words. General Patton has said so many times that we must train here as if we were in combat. We must try to keep our training as close to warlike conditions as possible. We must always work as if we were in actual combat with the enemy. Any officer who could not control his drinking in California could not control his drinking in combat. I could not see any eyes nor heads moving in agreement. I hesitated our support, but none came. I hesitated for support, but none came. Gentlemen, I want to take this country. Gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity. I want to take this opportunity to answer some of the personal attacks which some of you have made on me. Some of you have said that I should be court-martialed. Again, I looked at General Patton and expected him to stop me. He was looking out the window into the desert. Getting angry, I let my anger show. I'm not on this trial case. I would be on trial if I had failed to follow the regulations for the office of the judge or advocate. None of us should expect to avoid court martial if we avoid to perform our duty. To those who argue that I have been too hard on our friend, the major, I can file additional charges. There's evidence the major revealed military secrets in Palm Springs. It is reported he told the military secrets in Palm Springs. It is reported he told a bartender the day our payroll leaves Indio. It takes several $100,000 to pay all of our soldiers. I prepared only one charge with the hope that the punishment would not keep our friend from military service. I could prepare several criminal charges against our friend. Embarrassed? How embarrassed would this command be if I had prepared several charges? I know that I am young, as some of you have charged. However, I am the only attorney on the staff. It is not a pleasant task to file criminal charges against a fellow officer. How embarrassed would this command be if I had not prepared the court-martial charge against the major? General Patton, I will answer any questions you might have. I looked at General Patton, who stepped towards to me and asked the staff, any of you want to ask Lieutenant Williamson any questions? No one said a word. General Patton said, you answered my questions, Lieutenant. I walked to the back of the room. General Patton did not say anything for several seconds. His eyes attempted to meet the eyes of every officer in the room. I was beginning to fear he would dismiss the meeting without any position on the court-martial charges and dismiss me from the assignment as judge advocate. General Patton asked, Lieutenant, you are exactly right. Our higher headquarters is wrong. They do not have to lead any troops into combat. We have to live with the troops in California. You write a nasty letter to our higher headquarters. Put in the letter the words you have given us. Keep it short. Do not argue with them. Just tell them the major will be court-martialed. Get that answer on my desk by noon. I'll sign it and get it back to headquarters. When I returned to my desk and work as assistant to Colonel Gay, the Corps G4, he said, you presented that quite well. One thing I'm sure, we both prefer to make property decisions rather than people decisions. General Patton never likes to oppose higher headquarters, but he will if the troops are involved. What is your guess on what higher headquarters will do on General Patton's answer? They will transfer the major to some other higher headquarters. They always do. That's the reason so many in headquarters don't know much about commanding troops. I never heard what happened to the court-martial charges. Hold on. That's the reason so many in higher headquarters don't know much about commanding troops. I never heard what happened to the court-martial charges. The major was transferred to a higher headquarters. All right, you guys, good job. We'll come back. Hold on. Yeah, we'll come back and we'll do know what you know and know what you do not know later. Thank you. All right, you guys, welcome back. Okay, cool. Know what you know and know what you do not know. How do we know that? Was a frequent question asked by General Patton. Now and then answer would be Now and then the answer would be the information came from Washington. With such an answer, General Patton would go into one of his short lectures saying, Washington is the most unreliable source of information you could ever use. An officer in a swivel chair in the Pentagon actually knows nothing. All that he knows comes from soldiers in the field. I do not want to come down too hard on these poor souls in the Pentagon, but they know almost nothing from first-hand knowledge. Everything they know is second-hand information. All they do is collect paper facts from the field organizations. General Patton instructed, we must always know exactly what we know and what we do not know. Never get the two confused. If we get confused over what we know, we can cause many men to die. That is the problem of having our army controlled from Washington. The officers in the Pentagon seldom get near the fighting to see exactly what goes on in war. General Patton demanded that we sort through our known and unknown facts to know exactly what we really knew. It could be a shipment of new tanks from Detroit. Some officers some officer might say that the tanks were shipped on a certain date because the shipping notice said when they were shipped. General Patton would explain, that is the paperwork on the tanks, which some clerk in some office typed. That clerk would not know for sure that the tanks were even loaded on the flat cars, or they could be loaded and still sitting in some rail yard waiting to be hooked onto a train. If no one knew where the tanks were, General Patton would assign one of us to get on the telephone and follow up on the ranks on the tanks every day. Often his briefing would end, raise hell if there is any follow up. This type of management saved thousands of hours in staff meetings. No time was wasted on what someone has told us about our equipment. No one, no time was wasted on what someone had told us about our equipment. We had to go out and try the equipment in the field. We read all of the technical manuals, but did not accept any of the information as facts until the facts were proven by actual desert sand experience. General Patton lectured, every tank and every truck is as different as every man. Make sure every driver knows his tank or truck. He must know exactly how many gallons of gas and oil are needed for a mile and for an hour, and at different speeds and conditions. Check the tank every time it is refueled. If it is using too much of anything, send it to heavy maintenance. We must know our equipment. Our staff played a little game with Washington, all done with General Patton's instruction. Washington was trying to help every unit as much as possible by sending experts to us from the manufacturers of our tanks and trucks. Many of these experts were of draft age and could be called to active duty with the Army. Washington wanted us to have a dozen or more of these experts with us all of the time. General Patton did not want anyone in his organization who was under his total and complete command. We seldom used any of the experts more than one day. We were instructed to get all of the information we could from the expert, including his full name, address, and draft number. At the end of the day, General Patton would see the expert in his office and tell him not to return unless he was in uniform. I remember the shock of some of these experts when General Patton would smile and say, "We appreciate your coming to visit us." We need all of the help we can get. We want you here with us full time. We have your name and address, so I'm writing to your draft board asking for you personally to come serve with us. Most of the experts were under 40 years of age. Some of them would protest and explain that they were excused from the draft because they were necessary to help industry. General Patton would say, I have hundreds of men who could be excused from the draft. Most of the soldiers have civilian salaries. Most of the soldiers had civilian salaries higher than they are now paid in the Army. If I were running Washington, all of you would make the same wage as soldiers in the Army. I am not sure any of the experts General Patton asked to have drafted ever returned to the desert. We had our own experts. I remember a visiting expert who became angry when one of our second lieutenants was reading a newspaper during the expert's lecture. The visiting expert asked our second lieutenant, I suppose you know more about this front-wheel drive Jeep than I do. The lieutenant did not put down his paper as he answered, I would hope so. Then you should be up here giving this lecture. What is your name? I'm going to report you to General Patton. The lieutenant continued to read the paper as he said, My name is down in the left-hand corner of the diagram you are seeing. My company made all of the blue paints. My company made all of the blueprints for your company. Report me to General Patton if you wish. I know that most of the men in this class know as much about the transmission on that truck as you do because I've told them. When you see General Patton, he will tell you he will be writing to your draft board to have you drafted into military service. The visiting expert gave us a recess and never returned from the recess. When we told General Patton of our absent expert, he laughed. General Patton resented Washington paying high consulting fees on a per-day basis to the civilian experts to spend a few days with the Army. He wanted full-time experts in the Army. He did not want civilians drawing high salaries working every day with soldiers. A great number of soldiers and officers could have avoided the draft and remained in civilian life on higher salaries. General Patton often explained the problems of being in Washington. Now, where would an armchair expert in Washington get his facts on the use of a tank in the field? From the company that manufactured the tank. Now, what will the manufacturer say about his tank? He is sure to cut the fuel to the bare minimum to make his tank look good. This information is sent to the supply sergeant in Washington, who adds all this into a fancy chart. Of course, the sergeant will add 20% to the figure to make sure. There is no shortage of gas. This goes to the lieutenant, who adds a bit more to make sure that he cannot be blamed for a tank being out of gas. Keep passing such figures up in the chain of command, and you may have twice as much gas as you need. We have to know every piece of our equipment. General Patton advised, wars are won by knowing what we know. We must know exactly what we need for every day. If we try to carry into combat more gas, oil, supply parts, or anything that we do not need, it could lose a war as quickly as letting a soldier carry a pound more than he needs on his back. We must cut to the bone because we are going to travel fast. One day our gas supplies were low for all the Desert Training Command. We could plan for only a one-day maneuver. One lieutenant filled all of his tanks to the top. When he was questioned about taking on so much gas, he answered, the Army Tech Manual from Washington says the gas tanks must be filled to the top at all times to prevent moisture accumulating to the tank and causing rust. When General Patton learned that several tanks were missing because of the lack of gas, there was an explosion by General Patton. He scolded, no dang gas tank will ever rust out before this war is over. How much moisture is there in the desert? Almost none. Forget about rust in the tanks. We will be moving so fast that rust will never catch us. Know exactly what every tank needs for the maneuver. Ration the gas with a definite reserve, but don't fill her up as if you were pulling into an auto service station. We are trying to learn how to run these tanks to kill the enemy soldiers. We are not in this war to prevent rust in the tanks. In a sober mood, General Patton explained to the tank drivers, you must know your tank and how much fuel it uses. When you know, you will not be worried about having too little gas. Several times, General Patton told a story about how to lose a war. With his boyish grin, he related a story of a maneuver in Louisiana. Relax for a few minutes, and I will tell you how to lose a war. Wars are won by little things, often at unimportant crossroads. Unimportant crossroads. Last year, in Louisiana, 1941, we had a Chinese national enlisted in our American army. He looked like any other American soldier in his uniform, except he did not understand much English and could speak almost no English. Well, this poor soldier got lost on one of our maneuvers. Being unable to speak English, he could not ask where his outfit was camped. I doubt that he could pronounce the name of his outfit so that the American could understand him. Being in the American uniform and walking along the highway, civilian drivers give him a ride until the Chinese soldier would point to the door, indicating he wanted out. This poor soldier was stranded at last at a crossroad. This poor soldier was stranded at last at a crossroad where he attempted to hitchhike a ride with an army vehicle of any unit. The big problem with this soldier was that he did not know exactly how to hitchhike. He used his index finger to point forward instead of using his thumb to point in the direction he wanted to ride. Can you guess what happened? For one convoy of army trucks, the Chinese soldier sent the entire convoy down the road. The Chinese soldier pointed. Of course, no driver stopped, since the man did not act like a hitchhiker. He was directing traffic. General Patton paused. Do all of you realize how easy it would be for one enemy soldier in an American uniform to destroy our firing capability? This story does not get any better. Half a dozen officers stopped and tried to tell this Chinese soldier how to direct traffic. They gave up when they could not get him to understand English. These officers did not know enough to know that the soldier was wanting a ride and did not want to direct traffic. The soldier knew more than all of the officers. He knew he was lost. This man deserves a medal for teaching us how to lose wars. Always know where your outfit is going. If you do not know, say so and find out. Would you believe it took us a week to locate all the troops this Chinese soldier sent in the wrong directions? He scattered troops, trucks, and tanks all over Louisiana and Texas. Several times, General Patton mentioned this Chinese soldier in the evening meetings in his tent. I remember his stressing, so many people in the world are confused that Chinese, so many people in this world are confused at So many people in this world are confused as that Chinese hitchhiker who pointed with his index finger instead of his thumb. How many can put into words exactly what they know and what they want out of his life? How many can put into words exactly what they know and what they want out of life? We get a ride here and take a trip there, but we never really know where we are going. We live our lives like this Chinese hitchhiker. We live our lives like the Chinese hitchhiker. One evening, General Patton was telling the story when one of our highest ranking colonels confessed, General, your pearls of wisdom hit me harder than all the rest. I am the SOB that gave that Chinese soldier his military police armband so the troops would know he was directing traffic. I had never had the guts to admit this. I tried to talk to that soldier, and all he would say was, no eat, no eat. I pointed northeast. So he pointed northeast for the next convoy of trucks. We sent some units into enemy areas. It was long after this happened that it came to me that this soldier was not saying northeast, but was trying to say he was hungry. We laughed. General Patton said, I should keep you from getting your star as a brigadier general. The colonel replied, you would have every right to block my promotion, but I can tell you one thing. In training or in combat, I'm going to check every MP at every crossroad. Better, we should hold the convoys in position and scatter troops all over the battle area. This colonel finished the war with the three this colonel finished the war with the 3 stars of a lieutenant general. He was G4 for the 3rd Army for all of the drives through he was G4 for the 3rd Army for all of the drives through to Berlin. It was not an easy task to keep all of General Patton's troops with fuel, food, and clothing, including white socks every day for every soldier. Okay, we're on 167. Get up front. That's what's going to happen next. We're going to take another break. I think I need it. My pronunciation is not amazing right now. I'm kind of saying wrong things, but that's okay. We'll be back. Thank you. Um, oh yeah. Okay, here we go. Get up front. Excuse me. One of General Patton's orders was get up front. The civilian rule would be get on sight. His orders often aroused laughter. I want every member of the staff to get up front at least once every day. You will never know what is going on unless you can hear the whistle and whine of the bullets. You must lead the men. It is easier to lead than to push. He would be silent for several seconds before saying with a big smile, besides, having you, senior colonels, up front is a great incentive and temptation for the younger officers. Nothing like creating a vacancy to get a promotion. We laughed with him. He had made his point. He wanted every officer, staff, and line command to serve the troops so completely that no soldier would ever think of shooting anyone other than the enemy. No officer had to be in any fear of being shot by his own troops. Hatred for poor officers could exceed the hatred for the enemy. General Patton insisted on the type of leadership which would not be in fear of being in front of the troops. Some writers have said that General Patton was hated on by his troops. This is totally false. General Patton was on the front lines often enough that many of his men could have used a stray bullet to express their hatred. My suspicion is that many German soldiers had chances to shoot General Patton. I'm sure that many General Patton soldiers saw his shining helmet at the front. General Patton's troops respected him so much that any German soldier with an ounce of sense would have been afraid to shoot General Patton. The Germans knew that if General Patton was shot by the Germans, the American troops would be so enraged that no German prisoners would be taken alive for weeks. The Germans also knew that when they faced General Patton, there was a good chance that they would be captured. General Patton used the old log chain idea, saying, trying to lead men from behind makes you a driver and not a leader. It is easier to lead men just as it is easier to pull a log chain. You cannot push a log chain and you cannot push troops. The troops will keep running back to you for instructions, really from fear. A leader has to be ahead of his men. You got to know what is going on all the time. You cannot swim without being in the water. You cannot ice skate without being on ice. No one ever learned to skate on a map board. Take the map with you and get up front. There is a story about General Patton, which I have learned is not fiction. General Patton returned to his headquarters from the front lines to find his engineers poring over maps, trying to decide where to cross a river. General Patton advised, cross the river at this point. He pointed to a spot on the map and marked the spot with a red marker. A senior colonel said, General, we have little information about the depth of the river where you pointed. We would probably have to build a pontoon bridge, and we do not know the soil conditions of the banks. We will cross where I made the mark. Every man can walk across, and I am certain the tanks can get enough solid ground to drive across. The banks are solid. The river is wide, but quite shallow. How can we be sure, General? Take a look at my pants. That's how shallow the water is. I walked across without collecting any enemy fire. Often I am asked why General Patton was so crude as to urinate in the Rhine River when he crossed into Germany with his Third Army. He said so many times that he intended to do what every great military leader such as Caesar and Napoleon had done when they crossed the Rhine, urinate in the Rhine, to show no fear of the attacking the mainland of Germany. General Patton would not break tradition with the great military commanders of history. Never make a decision too early or too late. That'll be next, but let's see what's going on with time. 51. We haven't even been here for an hour. Yikes. Let's think. All right, we're going to take one more break, and then we're going to do one more chapter. Thank you, everyone. Never make a decision too early or too late. Frequently, some new staff officer would want to make definite decisions about some training plan which had been received from higher headquarters. General Patton would be patient and ask, Colonel, what is the plan supposed? When is this plan supposed to be completed? I'm not sure, General. Until we know exactly what is required, let's confine our decisions to the training we know we must complete. We have enough to do without trying to anticipate We have enough to do without trying to anticipate everything that comes out of Washington. General Patton paused. Besides, chances are Washington will issue a dozen revisions before they give us their final plan. We should have a standard operating procedure. That's the way we did it when I was in the Pentagon. Colonel, we are not in the Pentagon. It is a good idea to have guidelines for making decisions, but in war, nothing is standard. The Pentagon can make standard operating decisions for all situations because of oh my gosh. The Pentagon can make standard operating decisions for all situations because all of their situations can be made standard. Combat decisions are never standard. At other times, he said, there is a right time to make every decision. Sorry, guys, excuse me. Trying to find the right time is the most important factor for all decisions. It is a mistake to make a decision too early, and it is a mistake to make a decision too late. The biggest mistake is to never make a decision. General Patton would pause and smile. Every old maid agrees with me. The best policy is to delay the decision as long as possible so that more facts can be collected. When the decision has to be made, we will never hesitate. Making a decision too early will result in making too many changes. Making decisions too late always results in emergency decision making, pressure decisions. We do not want to create any emergency situations which the enemy might use against us. If we plan carefully, we will never have any emergency decisions to make. This was in 1942, or about 20 years before the management experts invented the new decision making process called PERT for program evaluation and review techniques. There's PERT charts in business too, I think. I don't know. Now I gotta look it up. I think it's the chart that's like it looks like GarageBand kind of. PERT chart. Oh, it doesn't look like GarageBand. No, this is something different. This isn't business. Never mind. Hold on. Maybe it is. Hold on. A PERT chart, also known as a PERT diagram, is a tool used to schedule, organize, and map out tasks within a project. It's not really what I said. I don't remember what I was thinking of, to be honest. Whatever I was thinking of is something, though. I just can't remember what it was, but that's okay. Stuff happens. Okay. In 1942, General Patton perfected this process with his own four-letter words. I can imagine what General Patton would say about the new invention of management, namely MBO, management by objects. MBO, management by objectives. He would explode. What in the heck were the experts doing before they had objectives? Did they try to run a corporation with no objective with no objective except to keep the coffee pot hot? That's like trying to sail a boat without a rudder. Without knowing the mission, no one knows where they are going. Every soldier must know our objectives at all times. General Patton was giving the MBO lectures before the letters were invented. He was always stressing, no man can do anything without knowing what he is doing. Let the American soldier know what he is fighting for and why. When we let him know what he has to be done, he will do it. No soldier in the world can match the Americans for getting the job done. Generals and staff officers do not win wars. Soldiers win wars. The soldier must know what he is doing at all times. He must know the objective. The mission or objective was all important and had to be obtained at any cost in property or lives. General Patton warned us there was nothing wrong with retreating from the fighting at the front. He would pause without smiling. But you had a darn well better. He paused. He would pause without smiling. But you had darn better be on a litter and coming back feet first. I will shoot any man I see turning his back on the enemy unless he has been shot. I got a medal in World War I for saying I would shoot any man who deserted. General Patton never delayed in making a decision when it was time to make it. He cautioned, when a decision has to be made, make it. There was no totally right time for anything. Several months, whoa. Several months after the first edition of this book was published, I received a letter from a staff officer serving with an embassy in a foreign country. He asked a simple question: Did General Patton make his staff make the decisions? Did General Patton make his staff make the decisions, or did General Patton make the decisions? Our commanding general makes us make every decision. He has not made a decision since I have been here. If the decision is correct, he takes the credit. If it is wrong, we get the blame. It was an easy letter to answer. It was obvious this general was so afraid of making a wrong decision that he never made any decisions. General Patton made every major decision. The blame and credit was reserved. The blame and credit was reversed on General Patton's staff from that of the embassy general. If the decision was good, General Patton would give credit to the staff member. If the decision was wrong, General Patton would quip, I goofed. On that, I should have caught it. No way. My friend says that. I goofed. I should have caught it. Often he would explain, we did not spend enough time getting the facts on this problem. Major commands issue orders over a signature indicating, by order of the commanding general, with the name of the organization. General Patton's name went on every order, and he accepted full responsibility for every decision. All right, guys. I think we've been here for an hour. That's a good amount of time. It's like I don't know, like you go to school for like an hour sometimes. When I was a kid, I would go to school for an hour. Some classes are an hour. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate everything. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll read Too Much Effin'. No, that's how it says. Too Much Ifin', Perhaps'n, and Maybeian will never win a battle. Next time. Thanks for everything. Bye.